Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. We've got another great video for you coming up. I just wanted to quickly mention the giveaway winners from the previous video. 3 lucky subscribers will be shown on the screen at random times in this video, so watch the whole thing and pay attention. I will be choosing another 3 subscribers randomly for the next giveaway. All you have to do is watch this video, subscribe with the notification bell on, and drop a like on this video. That's all you guys, and you will automatically have a chance to win the prize. Anyway, I'm super excited for this video, so without further ado, let's get into it.
Teachers of Reddit, have you ever had a crush on a student? And if so, how did you feel about yourself? I used to teach entry-level programming at an art school to undergrads, and later at the graduate level. It happened all the freaking time, but I never felt bad about it, cause they were adults, and I was the same age. Obviously, I couldn't act on anything as a matter of policy, and I certainly didn't let it affect my grading, but it was difficult, especially with the 2 instances, where I could tell it was mutual. Or maybe it wasn't, and they just wanted better grades, I don't know. They both got C's regardless. You could have at least upgraded them to a C++. My dad was my mom's professor in university. They got married. The marriage didn't go well. I'm the result of what happens when people try to save a relationship by having a baby. Dude, me too. My parents are idiots. The freak were they thinking? Glad I was born though. College professor here. I get a lot of gorgeous students, but the attraction usually lasts as long as it takes them to open their mouths. What can I say? When you're in your 30s, 18 to 22-year-olds suddenly seem very shallow and immature to you. Trust me, you will come to think the same way. But then I had a student who was not only stunningly beautiful, but also very mature beyond her years, and she had a lot of similar interests to me. And what's better, because she was new to America, from England, she was also a bit lost and confused, and I told her she could to me whenever she wanted, if she needed advice and guidance. She did for a while, but I never did anything but just talk with her. As attracted as I was to her, trying to make a move would have been a very tricky thing, because student-teacher relationships are very taboo. The thing is though, as she adjusted to America, she started coming by less often, because she didn't really need our talks anymore. After the class was over, I hardly ever ran into her anymore, so the opportunity just never presented itself. I look back on it now as a for the best thing. Even if she had been interested in me, and I don't think she was, I'm quite used to my students, even the more mature ones, automatically seeing me as an old geezer. Even though I'm 31 now and this was a couple years ago, if I'd had a relationship with her, and we'd been caught, it could have potentially been the end of my career, or at the very least it would have gotten me in a lot of hot water. But I also found that shortly after the class ended, and I stopped seeing her with any frequency, that she fell out of my thoughts too, and I went back to being interested in women my own age who are preferably not my students. I'm actually glad that it doesn't bother me anymore, because I feel like it would be beyond pathetic for someone like me to be so hopelessly in love with a student. I worked at a daycare for 6 months as a college student, and suddenly found myself attracted to 30-year-old single moms. I'm 22. Maturity is a turn on hair. Sort of. I was 24, and she was 17, and I never did anything, but I totally acknowledged to myself that she was very pretty and clever. It made me feel weird, but I didn't sexualize her or anything. It was more a thought that wow, if I was 7 years younger, I'd totally be into her. But I didn't sexualize her or anything. Right, we got it, bro. Not me personally, but had a guy that graduated my year 2012, secretly dating our student teacher for app English in 12th grade. Not a huge thing, she was 4 years older. They started dating 2 weeks into the school year that year, and he got her pregnant. They got married last June. It was a very weird situation for all of us that knew, as she was very open with the girls in the class when our main teacher was out for a few days. Once had a very attractive student teacher in my senior year. She was 24, I was 18. A ton of the other students were talking about how bad they wanted to freak her. I became pretty good friends with her. We read similar books, listen to similar music, and one day she asked me for a ride home because her car wasn't working. I drove her to her house and she invited me inside. After talking for about an hour, we went into the bedroom and freak. We kept it secret from everybody, and after I graduated we began a stable relationship. We dated for about 2 years, until she moved to Washington. I would say she had a crush on me. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of influence you have as a young, 20s, and successful teacher over high school age kids. I don't know how to say this, but you if get a free in as the young teacher, because they can't relate to the more veteran teachers. The kids see a somewhat idealized version of you, and if you wanted to, it is quite easy to take advantage of that trust. This is why teacher-student relationships are avoided by teachers, because it's hard to tell what's real and what is a byproduct of that special mentor relationship. If you think your student is the one or something, just keep in touch and hit them up when they're an adult, mentally, not when they hit 18 and graduate. I teach kindergarten, so I don't exactly get crushes on my students. But as a person that doesn't want any kids themselves, there are a few kids, maybe 1 in 40, where I can't help myself from thinking I'd adopt the shit out of you if you didn't have any parents. It takes a special kid to bring out my paternal instinct. I was a tar for a drawing class for a couple of semesters. It was the sort of tar position where the professor would hand you the outline for the semester and you teach one of his classes. There was this one girl that looked like a sort of Persian goddess, and she was freaking talented, which drew me to her even more. We got to the part of the class where we started doing portraits. I'd take volunteers from the class and we'd all draw them. I would bounce between critiquing students' work and doing the portrait myself, because observing is a great way to learn. The first few went very well. I was on my teaching game, and my portraits were up to my standards. Being a good sport, I'd give it to the model when they were done. The first one asked for this, and it just sort of became a thing. Then she came up. The thing about drawing is you have to be able to ignore your brain's preconceived ideas of what you are looking at and dissect the visual information analytically. I found her so beautiful. For the first time in my life I could not do this. I drew, I erased, I drew, I erased. I wasn't bouncing around as much as I had been, because I was so frustrated that I could not draw the one person in the class I wanted to draw. We finished, and it turned out okay. Not great, just okay. I still gave it to her, but I was honestly ashamed of it. At the end of the last portrait class, one of the models asked how they'd done. This led to a discussion on how they'd all done. Persian goddess asked the inevitable question. I told her she was difficult to draw. She asked why. I immediately regretted my initial response. I think I said something about her features being unusual or something cringeworthy. I wanted to tell her she was too beautiful, but I couldn't. If you're reading this, Persian goddess, I'm sorry. I should have told you that you were gorgeous. This may not exactly count, but some years ago I taught English in Japan. I'm a woman, and I taught an older female student at her house. Sorry Reddit, no going where you think. She was quite nice, and one day she asked me to teach a lesson for her son, who was in high school. I agreed. I just came at the usual time and did the lesson with him instead of her. Well, he was a senior in high school. I was in my late 20s, and I thought he was adorable. I don't really feel guilty. My thoughts didn't even begin to approach the sexual side of a crush. I just thought he was cute and sweet. But he definitely had a bit of a crush on me, and our mutual appreciation was probably noticed by the mom. So here is where it gets hilarious. Next week I come to teach the mom again, and we do the usual introductory conversation at the beginning of the lesson. It was during the rainy season, so I said to her that I miss the Sunday. She looked very confused for a minute, so I pointed up towards the sky to try and mime what was talking about. We were in the first floor her house, and I'm pretty sure I was pointing upstairs to her son's room, so she continued to misinterpret my English. It took me a minute to realize why she had this upset look on her face, and I don't think I was able to save her from her thoughts. After that day she cancelled the class, and I never saw either of them again. As this is not a throwaway, let me restate that I never crossed any lines with her son, even in the privacy of my mind. So I don't really feel bad about the whole thing, but I thought my story might amuse Reddit. I taught a large lecture class at university level for a number of years. My department head clearly stated that hanky-panky with students was a fireable offense. There were opportunities, but I did not pursue. One situation, though not directly pertinent, stands out. When lecturing, I pay close attention to student reactions. In larger classes, I tended to settle on certain students for my repeated sampling. If they seemed to understand what I was talking about, things were okay. During one lecture on some fairly complex ideas, I had included, among other students, one beautiful quote. Until that day, I knew she was beautiful and appreciated her for that, but nothing more. Each time I spot checked, she was paying rapt attention, eyes wide, full of excitement at the knowledge I was dispensing. I was falling in love during my lecture. Such beauty, and she was enthralled with a topic that I totally loved. I required students to do a journal at the end of each class. She obviously had no clue as to what I was talking about. I was deeply puzzled. She had been right there, at every point. Later in the semester, I went to a men's basketball game. She was a cheerleader, and one of the prime ones at that. Even while our team was being embarrassed by the visitors, the cheerleaders kept doing their job, as if the fans' excitement would make a difference in this lost cause. And she was one of their leaders, eyes wide, showing the same excitement and verve that I had interpreted as her interest in my lecture. I learned a life lesson that day. My 6th grade teacher had a crush on the student teacher that came to help out for a couple months. Although not obvious, they frequently proposed to her in front of the class soon after. They got married and had a kid 2/3 years after. Edit for clarity, they freak outside of the bounds of the classroom. The teacher was a total fox as well. I would have loved to park my punch buggy in her garage. What was the student's reaction when he freaked her in front of the class? How did he know her cries of yes were not a general affirmation of her pleasure in taking it doggy style as she tried to read Phantom Tollbooth out loud? Back in 8th grade I had this young super attractive teacher for history. Don't know how old she was, but she had only been teaching for 1 year and was recently married, so my guess is 23 over 24. Anyway, one day I go to her desk to hand her something, and she was standing and leans forward to show me in the book what I need to read/look at. Well, I missed everything she was saying because holy hell, I could see right down her shirt, and those boobs had 8th grade me captured. I was totally zoned out just looking and looking. At some point she stopped talking and noticed what I was doing and just smiled and was looking at me, never stood up or covered up. Our eyes met and she just smiled, winked, and then sent me on my way. The rest of the year was kind of flirty, but she never ever tried anything. Fast forward 12 to 13 years, and one day randomly on Facebook I get a friend request from her. Haven't spoke to her since I left the 8th grade. No idea why she added me. Thought, well, maybe she adds all the kids she taught. Well, despite my graduating class having over 1,000 kids, we had no mutual friends. So I waited a while to accept it, and then eventually did. Still no friends that were in my grade. Finally I got creeped out and deleted her. Still have no idea why she did that. Makes me wonder if there's something more behind it. Her adding you should have given you the clue that she was ready for that balls deep action, yo. It is one of the most flattering things for an attractive student to take an interest in a subject that you are teaching. She's an undergrad and you're tagging a subject that you are deeply interested in. Sure, her question's a novice, but she is enthusiastic and curious about your nerdy field in which you basically toil alone. If you make it past the first year without doing anything stupid, the next year you tar the same class, you meet a whole new year of students, and then you realize that there's a whole new crop of attractive young neophytes who bear a striking resemblance to your first crush last year, and that you are probably going to give more or less the same assistance to your students as last year, until you realize that in class you are helping everyone refine their understanding and move on while you toil with few peers in the same subject that many will superficially take an interest in and move on year after year. Why does it have to be an attractive student, the one that flatters you with her interest? Non-attractive people can be interested in your crap too, and that too should be flattering.
A big thank you from me to you for watching. I appreciate your support. Click on the screen now to watch our next video. I personally think you will like it a lot.